Good evening, guys. Bill McMillan here with NDWX.com. Just about 11 o'clock Tuesday evening. Obviously, the big story remains Major Hurricane Florence churning ever so much closer to the southeast United States, and unfortunately continues to look like a major event for our friends in the Carolinas. Our thoughts and prayers are with our friends and family in the Carolinas. Officially, the National Hurricane Center brings Florence onshore as a major hurricane late Thursday night or early Friday between Jacksonville and Wilmington. However, there's some data and multiple forecast models that would suggest when Florence is almost making landfall, she may move kind of parallel to the coast southwest for a while, which would be just an even more devastating scenario. Make it very clear this is going to be a devastating storm regardless of whether she continues to come onshore as depicted here or would stay just offshore, really raking the coastal areas and interior areas of the Carolinas for potentially 24 to 36 hours with major hurricane conditions. A long way to go before we can really iron out these details, but the latest data that is coming in is concerning for the potential of a prolonged not only wind threat, flooding threat, and surge threat. The surge has to really be focused on. I mean, the potential is there for a 9 to 15 foot storm surge just in the right front quadrant, exactly wherever Florence comes on shore. So some devastating impacts regardless of what takes place. This is a look at the European forecast model upper air pattern, and I want to be very clear here. Locally in central Indiana, we're looking at a very quiet time of things now through the rest of this week, including the upcoming weekend, along with warmer temperatures that will build in here as we go through the latter part of the week as well. But for the purpose of this video, we'll really focus in on Florence, and as we put this into motion, notice how the European forecast model brings Florence close to the North Carolina coast late Thursday before kind of curling her back to the southwest just off the coast, eventually making landfall in South Carolina Saturday night or very early Sunday. Again, a lot to be determined here, just one potential scenario. As we continue to advance this, the European would like to bring the remnants of Florence into the Ohio Valley and potentially even impact Indiana early next week. I will say, though, that the GFS is much more progressive with this trough here and would result in the remnant moisture and impacts of Florence moving east of our area, impacting more of Ohio and points east. We'll continue to keep a very close eye on things as we go. At the surface, the European again brings Florence just offshore North Carolina before turning her off to the southwest, paralleling the coast before eventually making landfall in South Carolina late Saturday or very early Sunday. A long way to go, devastating impacts nonetheless. As we continue to really focus in on the Carolinas here, regardless of whether Florence comes in along the North Carolina coast as a major hurricane late Thursday, early Friday, or kind of parallels the coast before eventually coming in on the South Carolina coast, we're talking about devastating impacts, not only from a surge perspective, a wind perspective, but a flooding perspective as well. And then eventually, wherever Florence does decide to kind of turn north, and we're going to have to really keep a close eye on the southern Appalachian region, the Blue Ridge of North Carolina. That orographic lift associated with the storm kind of running into that terrain can really result in some dangerous flash flooding, not to mention additional inland wind threats as well as we progress late into the weekend and early parts of next week. Bottom line, we stay quiet here through the weekend. Eventually we may have to deal with the remnant moisture and potentially wind from Florence. A lot to be kind of fine-tuned between now and then, though, before we get to that point. Our thoughts and prayers and focus remains across the Carolinas as we move through the next several days. Guys, make it a great night. Thank you as always for logging on to NDWX.com. We'll talk with you soon.